Hello everyone, welcome back to Risk of Rain. My name's Best Friend Skull, and today, since you voted for him, we'll be taking Acrid on into the Monsoon. This should be an awful lot of fun. So, let's take this the hard way. Now, unfortunately, since we're doing our first run on Monsoon, I won't be able to go too harshly into how Acrid works. I'm going to quickly try and go over him in summation. We have 4 new moves, as we do with every different class. Our first one is a relatively basic attack where we just slash or bite the enemy. But the unique thing about this is that it has a stacking damage over time effect. The more you hit them with it, the more damage this damage over time effect does. The next move we have is an Acid Spit. Acrid is a bit of a unique case because he can operate at a range, but also can operate at close range. He has one close range move, and one move that has a relatively short range, but still a range enough. Then we have the Toxic Sludge. It lays a track of green goop behind you, and anything that steps on it is damaged. But it will also speed you, and if you're in co-op, any teammates you have right up. And then we have Contagion. Contagion applies a damage over time that will then spread to whatever surrounds that enemy. It will also, if that enemy is killed, remain on screen for a certain amount of time to check around if there's anything else it can go to. It spreads out exponentially. If you hit one thing with it, then it will spread out to 2 things there afterwards, and all 3 of those will spread to 2 things again. Once every second. Now, with that covered, those are just the basics of Acrid, and I'll try and go over him in a bit more detail later on when I'm done talking about how Monsoon works. Monsoon is an increased difficulty setting in almost every sense of the way. For one thing, as I'm sure you've already noticed, the teleporter timer is increased by 30 seconds. Great. 30 more seconds spent in hell. Now, it won't decrease anything that you would get normally. It doesn't decrease item spawns. It doesn't make the stages themselves necessarily any harder. What it will do, though, is it will naturally spawn more things, and increase their stats in the first place, and then it will also make it so that they spawn even more frequently and in even greater awfulness due to the fact that the timer is accelerating. The timer has accelerated. Well, do you remember how when we were in Rainstorm, I said that it would go up to easy at 5 minutes, it would go up to normal at 9, and all that kind of stuff? Well, here, just every 3 minutes it increases. We're currently at 4 minutes and a bit, and we're on easy. And then when it switches to 6, it'll be on medium, and it will go up like that, which means that by the time that about 36 minutes has passed, you're on the hardest difficulty. Now, not only that, but it will also increase a whole pile of other things, and will also do some more unique things as well, namely that it adds in a new type of enemy, but we'll be seeing that later. If you want my advice for how to play Monsoon, essentially play it like you would any other game of Risk of Rain, but at a greatly accelerated pace. Hit the teleporter as soon as you see it, except maybe on the first level, where you might want to wait until you're level 2 or 3. During the teleporter timer, try and go out and get as many things as you can while the teleporter is going. Do not try to go around and farm there afterwards. I do that a few times during this play session, but I definitely would not recommend that unless you're very confident with your character. In my case, Acrid, I would consider him probably my best, most consistent character in the game. While Handy is my favorite, I would consider this character to be my most consistent. Now, see, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going around and just collecting a bunch of stuff. Admittedly, that one turned out to be completely and entirely worth it, because Acrid has this frequency to kill things without meaning to, and if you can make those things dying be productive for you, such as with the Ceremonial Dagger, then all the better. Now, another thing to note here is that there's a thing that I can get right now. There's a secret that I could go and show off. But on Monsoon, I would recommend against ever going there. Those who have played the game and know what I'm talking about, yeah, just don't in Monsoon. It is not worth the time, because you'll wind up falling behind the clock like mad. Now, another thing to note here is how much damage I'm doing to Ifrit. While there are better classes for just simply flat-out killing everything around you, Acrid is pretty much the best at killing very specific things. While that is meant to be the job of another class, namely the sniper is shit at everything in most cases, so... I want to quickly take a second here to go over the items that we've gotten, because we've gotten a couple of new ones because we did those achievement runs a little while ago. So let's just take a quick sec to do that. Well, the truth is we didn't really get too many, but we got one that is exceptionally worth noting. The current use item I have, the glowing meteorite, is the best use item. It is simply the best one. While others are good, and are comparable to it, in fact, the amount of damage this thing can do, the amount of chaos it can cause, and just passive death around you is far too good to pass up. Admittably, it does that, where if it targets you and it hits you, it does hurt like a truck. But if you can manage to successfully avoid it, one of the ways that I would suggest doing this is to just hold a rope, because it will not target air, it will only target ground. Then you're pretty much going to be able to do more damage than you can do yourself, ever. Another thing to note with how Acrid works. Acrid's acid spit stuns temporarily. My general recommendation for a basic combination to do with Acrid: if you find a cluster of enemies, because his main purpose is crowd control, and he does more damage with it than pretty much any other class in the game, what you should do is you should just try and run through them with caustic sludge, unless they're something like, say, a mechanical spider who will pretty much hit you if you try and do that. Then turn around, shoot out a contagion, and then acid spit. The contagion will hit something, of course, and then knock it back to keep it inside of the caustic sludge. Then the acid spit will stun it inside of the caustic sludge, and allow that second to let the contagion start to spread. And the more you can make that thing spread, the better. Another thing worth noting with him is that his melee attack is not exactly worth skipping. It's actually exceptionally powerful. I've been told before that I am a very ballsy player of Acrid. I know that a lot of people like to keep their distance, like to kind of mainly focus on acid spitting instead of going up and clawing things, and I just don't find that this works too well in most cases, particularly not on Monsoon, where it will cause you to fall behind. The other thing worth noting with it is that if you can stack that onto a boss, that boss will die very, very fast. Oh. This is another new thing with Monsoon. I mentioned before that there's a new type of enemy that pops up. Well, this is it. I'm going to be showing him off in a little bit, because he spawned in kind of a weird place. But he will be a problem. I can assure you of that. Getting back to Acrid, though, Acrid also excels in one other bit of him. The thing is about how he works is that he is essentially a combination of a ranged and melee character. He can melee, he can range, he's honestly fairly good at both of them. Like, I would consider him to be the second best class in the game, period. But the issue with him is he is squishy. He will not last if you don't know how to dodge. So if you remember before when I said how handy he worked with the whole jumping and hitting thing, with Acrid it's very much alike to that. You can kind of jump around inside of a threat zone and just use his melee attack. You'll usually wind up hitting things and usually wind up not getting hit because of the fact that you're off the ground. So pretty much jumping back and forth and clawing at everything actually is a relatively good strategy. The other thing about him is his drones, because he synergizes really well with drones with the way that he works. Due to the fact that he just lays down caustic sludge, then spreads a contagion, then can like peck away with his acid spit. you can pretty much keep your distance and do insane amounts of damage without even doing anything, and all that drones do is support that even more. Now, I want to take a quick second here to note how he deals with bosses, because the thing is that, as I said before, he is squishy, and he doesn't have the advantage that the Enforcer, the Sniper, and Handy do. His melee attack does not knock back. It almost never does, in fact. It will knock back certain very specific enemies, but it does not do enough damage to count as a knockback attack. As such, against something like the Scavenger in this case, I'm keeping my distance because I don't want him to blitz me. Because he will. That electric shock attack of his will take out a lot of my health in very little time. Another fun thing that's worth noting with the Scavenger, just a little bit of flavor here, is that his subtitle is Tasting Your Own Medicine. If you actually look closely at him, he is wearing certain items that you can get in the game. You can notice in his left hand he's carrying the ukulele, and in his right he's carrying the Brilliant Behemoth. Much alike to, actually, the picture of the commando at the end of the game. Interesting. He also injects the soldier's syringe in order to make him increase his attack speed, and he has the disposable missile launcher on his back. Now, I'm just going to fast forward a little bit here, because I was just doing a little bit of collection before I went and did this. Oh, there he is. Blighted enemies. Blighted enemies will only ever spawn in Monsoon. As you can see, he's not taking very much damage. Well, he is taking a lot of damage quite quickly, but that was because there was one of him. Later on, those things will start spawning at the same frequency, at about the same frequency as elite mobs. Yes, it is really difficult to deal with. In fact, in a little bit here, I run into another one of them, and I kind of show off just how much they can actually do to you. Now, one thing that some guys in the thread noted was my hatred of Providence shrines. Yes, you can perceivably do that thing with the bustling fungus. The issue with that is that I just see that frequently causing you to fall behind a clock a little bit too much and not being worth it. So there's my opinion on that. Now here's the Bladed Clayman. Watch this. Look at how much that did to me in next to no time at all. And I have tough times. I have increased armor right now, but he just sort of beat the crap out of me for a little bit there, and it was just him. The reason for that is that Blighted enemies, the way that they work, is that for one thing, their damage is instantaneously increased by a factor of 10. They have 10 times the amount of damage as a regular version of what they are. The other thing is that depending upon what enemy they are, they have the properties of certain elites. In the case of the Blighted Clayman, he can teleport, just like the Yellow Elite. The other thing is that just like the Orange Elite, his attacks explode. But unlike them, it's not a chance of them exploding, they just always do. And it hurts. A lot. See, there goes one of my drones, and that was primarily due to... Oh. Good, another one. My general advice against Blighted anything, unless you are a character like Handy or the Enforcer, is to just run away from the Clayman version, particularly, because he's still just as fast as the other ones. And he will hurt a lot more. There is a little bit of debate upon that, like, factor of 10 thing, because some people seem to think that it is a percentage of your health. I don't think it is, because I've never had that experience. The other thing about Blighted enemies is that they do still technically register as a boss, so they do drop an item when you kill them. While they are invisible, you can see them if you have something like I have right now in the Toxic Centipede, which is something we unlocked with Acrid a little bit before. They will be highlighted by that. Also, your drones can still see them. Generally speaking, the fact that they're invisible doesn't usually make that much of a difference, because everything that auto-homes will find them. So, that's not a problem. The problem with them is that they're freaking hard as hell to deal with. They have way too much health, way more health. They have way more abilities. These guys freaking explode. And for some reason, it's always the Claymen that wind up spawning on me. Like, that Wisp was the first, it was the first one I've seen of those things in, like, 14 playthroughs. And other than that, I've almost always seen Claymen. Another thing worth noting, though, is the fact that, yes, this can happen. It's frightening. But you'll seldomly see it. Another thing worth noting with the glowing meteorite is that even though it can't hit the air, it can hit ground that you are inside of if you're on a rope. So try to stay away from any ground whatsoever. Fortunately enough, I was able to take care of that one relatively easily, because, well, it didn't swarm me. Now, as you can see, we're on, like, 29 minutes in, and, we're already on max difficulty. Now, I'm going to be doing something kind of dumb here, in that I am still going to be trying to get through the entirety of the contact light with all of the stuff. I'm going to try and go through every room, all that kind of stuff. On Monsoon, generally speaking, I would definitely advise against this, because that time increase also affects Providence. So Providence will be a huge issue if you let that clock get out of hand. The thing is that I have the glowing meteorite, and I'll show off why it is that that matters so much when I get to the Providence fight. Now, another thing with Acrid. Acrid's general hit quantity. A lot of people think it's quite low. Well, people that haven't looked into him, at least, will think it's quite low, because he doesn't necessarily attack all that quickly. Most of his attacks come from, you know, slashing or acid, or using acid sludge or stuff like that. He actually hits exceptionally quickly, but only with one attack. And it's not his claw, and it's not his spit. Contagion, when it spreads, will count as 2 extra hits. So therefore, with the Leeching Seed, or something like that, those things will at least attempt to activate every time that thing spreads, and they will attempt to activate twice. So if you can find a crowd and you launch one of those things off with a Leeching Seed on you, you'll be healing quite a bit quite quickly. Now, right there I was dealing with a Blighted Clayman, but fortunately enough, I'm dealing with him on flat ground, and that is where Acrid excels. If you can deal with them in a small room with flat ground, that is how to play Acrid right there. He will essentially obliterate them because you can walk back and forth, have them constantly going along your sludge, and then just contagion them over and over and over again. Now, I also want to note that I got the Happiest Mask. I'm just going to always note that, because that item is ridiculous on almost every character, period. And in this case, it gets even more ridiculous because the enemies are stacking up higher, they're scaling higher, and so's it, because of it. Now, all of my drones are dead right now, and that's pretty much because of the glowing meteorite. The glowing meteorite has a lot of drawbacks to it, I will admit that, but those drawbacks are more than worth it. Simply put, they're just, it's too much good and not enough bad. Now, since we just got the Wicked Ring, I want to take some time to note the new items that we've gotten throughout this playthrough. The new items that we've gotten throughout this playthrough are the Concussion Grenade, the Toxic Worm, and the Wicked Ring. And we just got the Telescopic Sight, which is another new one. These were ones that we gained from those achievements before. One of these is the Glowing Meteorite, which we got from dealing 5,000 damage in one single attack. We got that actually with Acrid, strangely enough, but I honestly have no idea how it happened. Honestly, I usually get that achievement just through random happenstance. Another one we got was the Concussion Grenade. The Concussion Grenade makes it so that there's a chance upon hitting of you just stunning an enemy flat out. And that can be exceptionally useful when something's applying a whole shit ton of pressure to you, and then it just sort of stops, and then you hit it, and it gets knocked backwards, because that's how stun works. Another one we got was the Toxic Worm, which we got from Acrid by spreading 10,000 feet of caustic sludge. Essentially, just keep playing and you'll get this one. Another one we got was the Dead Man's Foot. And the Dead Man's Foot I showed off how to get. What it does is that at low health, you'll drop a poison bomb. The poison bomb will explode when something runs across it, and then apply a damage over time effect. Another one we got was the Wicked Ring. And the Wicked Ring is, in my opinion, one of... well, I've said this a lot at this point, but it is one of the best items in the game. Every time you get a critical hit, all of your cooldowns reduce by 1. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It all works out. The Sticky Bomb, which we got from the Engineer, is a rather strange item, but it is definitely a good one. What it does is that on hit, you have a chance of sticking a bomb to them. And then that bomb will eventually, I think it's after 2 seconds, it will explode. And anything surrounding the enemy that exploded will take damage. The thing is that if you hit one thing, then that counts as 1 possibility for proc. If you hit 2 things, that counts as 2 possibilities for proccing. So if you have, say, an ability like Handy's Forced Reassembly, then you use that thing, then everything hit by that will have a chance of getting the Sticky Bomb to go off. It's not like most other on-hit items where it just counts 1. We're dealing with another blighted enemy at this point, but they're not that big of a threat anymore. I've kind of scaled out of their range. I can just keep away from them and deal with it kind of thing. The last new item that we got is the Telescopic Sight. We get this from the Sniper by one-shot killing 10 creatures consecutively. This is actually a relatively tedious and annoying achievement to get, I'm just going to note that. But it's worth it. Every time you hit something, there is a 1% chance that, essentially, God will intervene and shoot the thing and kill it. Just instantly. And, you know, having a 1% chance of instant killing with things that actually do damage, yeah, that's pretty worth taking. There is, however, one relatively large problem with the Telescopic Sight. It kind of bugs out sometimes and doesn't actually do its job. It says that it does, but it doesn't. And it's a bit of a problem, but it's still worth taking, all things considered. Now, at this point, we have a lot of drones, for one thing, and we deal a lot of damage. In my personal opinion, Acrid deals the most raw damage of any class in the game. Due to that, due to the glowing meteorite, due to our cooldowns resetting some of the time, due to the Sticky Bomb causing AoE damage, due to the damage over time effect of the Toxic Worm, due to the damage over time effect of the tether from the Plasma Chain, there's an awful lot of damage that we're doing. Unfortunately, we only have 2 Monster Teeth and a Med Pack and a Harvester Size. As far as, like, quick healing items, that's about all that we have. We don't heal very well right now. And that will be causing a problem later on. Something that's kind of worth noting right now, we have an item called the Timekeeper's Secret right now, and we've been over what it does before. But there's some frequent, like, mix-up with it. Getting stacks of that item is completely worthless. What most people think it does is that since the thing runs out after you use it, that you'll be able to get your ability refreshed on it faster the more of them you have. That is not the case. It is set to a static cooldown of 7 minutes. After you almost die, it takes 7 minutes for that thing to refresh, no matter what. All that getting stacks of it does is increase the timer slightly on that, on the time freeze that it does. As such, I don't consider getting stacks of it to be worth it. If you have another option, take it. Now this is when things get kind of ridiculous. There's an Inp Overlord, and in case you can't see it, there are currently 2 Blighted Claymen chasing after me at the same time. I am about to almost die from all of this shit, because there's just way too much for me to deal with. Fortunately enough, the glowing meteorite's around, and I have some drones surrounding me, but then that inevitably winds up happening because the drones don't know how to avoid anything. And then that. This is something worth noting. That Snake Eyes and that Golden Bomb both just appeared from one thing dying. And I'm gonna run away now, by the way. But they both appeared from one Blighted Clayman dying. Because the thing is that they count as a boss, but they also count as an elite. So when you kill them, ow! But when you kill them, they get the same elite chance that of proccing the 56-leaf clover that any other elite does. Which means that when they die, they have a chance of dropping 2 items. Which is pretty nice sometimes. Such as the example here, where we just got another Monster Tooth. Which is going to be incredibly helpful because of how freaking close we are to dying. And this is how Acrid frequently winds up going. You usually get a little bit cocky, and then the next thing you know it, the game decides, you know, you kind of deserve to die a little bit. Here, have this shit ton of Claymen, and then you're nearly dead. Fortunately enough, I am good enough at this to survive that, but a lot of people would have wound up very, very dead just now, and I wouldn't blame them. Now, we haven't gotten any new items, but I want to note some combinations of items that we've gotten recently. For one thing, we have the Lensmaker's classes. And these things, I've noted before, are very worth having around on someone like the Commando, or even on Acrid to an extent. But they're worth having around on almost damn near anyone if you have things around like, say, the Wicked Ring, or the Harvester's Scythe. That combination of items, that with the Lensmaker's classes increasing your critical hit chance, and those things proccing when you get a critical hit, inevitably, then you wind up refreshing your cooldowns pretty damn frequently, and you wind up healing quite frequently. And the Harvester's Scythe heals 12, which is pretty far from insignificant, and it will just go up and up the more of them you get. Another one worth noting is the combination of an infusion, which I believe we have. No, we don't. Oops. Well, I'll note it anyways. Is the combination of an infusion and a bitter root. Bitter root increasing your maximum health by a percentage, while the infusion just increases it statically. Now, here is when I gave up on fully completing the Risk of Rain stage. Because, honestly, if I had waited around any longer, if I had tried to use those keycards or anything like that, which, honestly, I don't have any of anymore, I would have wound up in all kinds of trouble. But here we go. Back to Providence again. We're not playing as Handy this time. Providence is a significantly easier enemy for Acrid than for a lot of characters in the game, actually. Some things worth noting with him are the fact that, for one thing, he has that shield ability, which he's going to use here relatively soon, I believe. There he goes. Now, the thing is with that, is that that blocks off all physical damage. As you can see, the Toxic Sludge is still doing just as much damage as it normally would, as does Infection. Well, sorry, Infection, yeah, as does Infection. So he can go straight through it. His melee attack, the stacking damage over time effect from that, also goes straight through it. It doesn't matter nearly as much for Acrid than it does for damn near anyone else, because he can just go right through it with the vast majority of his actually damaging attacks. And, as such, we're having next to no problem taking this guy out in next to no time at all. I mean, sure, our drones have taken a decent amount of damage at this point, but we're not Handy this time. We don't necessarily need them around, and also we've got 17k money, and so we should be fine. Now, this attack right here, this is when he leaves himself open, and I couldn't take advantage of it that time because those explosions are a lot bigger than they look, and I don't jump very high. I only have, like, what, 2 rescue jetpacks? So my jump height isn't necessarily the greatest. Another thing that we have currently that helps against this guy is the Golden Gun. I have noted before that it will increase your damage statically, so it increases the damage of pretty much everything you do. Now, I noted before that there's a reason to take in the glowing meteorite to the boss fight with Providence. This is why. And we're done. I don't think I need to say much more than that one, honestly. It just... bleh. Right there we had the telescopic sight proc on one of those two temple guards, and there you go, it just murdered him flat out. As a quick note, it will actually proc on bosses, but it will never proc on Providence for some reason. I'm not sure why. My guess is probably because that would be pretty dang overpowered, because that actually does just insta-kill things. It's not like another item in the game that says that it insta-kills things, but actually just does 5,000% of your damage. Now that we're dealing with the third form of Providence here, I'm going to note that there is one issue with Acrid versus Providence. Acrid is a crowd clearer. His ability of Contagion is focused on crowd clearing. You can't crowd clear when there's no crowd to clear, and it will just essentially fade away, in most cases. Another thing against Providence is that we're not Handy this time, as I noted before. Handy has a lot of armor. Acrid does not. Acrid needs to actually actively avoid damage against Providence, or he will take about a quarter of his health in a single hit. As such, with that in mind, you kind of have to play this one pretty passively on at least the second fight, because with the Umbra around, things become a lot more difficult to dodge consistently, and so you've got to pretty much lay down the sludge, lay down the infection, and pray. But he's not that difficult anymore, like, particularly considering that we went in at a decent time, and we've got a lot of drone helpers that are really useful to have around, and also we've got a combination of items that actually makes things a lot easier for a character like Acrid, that being the Head Stompers and the Rusty Jetpack. The Head Stompers deal extra damage based upon the amount of time you've fallen, and actually with one Rusty Jetpack, then you fall enough from one jump to actually deal damage. But you also won't take any fall damage with the Rusty Jetpack around, because that's not within your fall damage range. And because of that, jumping around and slashing at him can actually do a really good quantity of damage, particularly considering that you penetrate through his shield with that DOT effect. Now, right there, I did a lot of damage to him in pretty much no time at all. That was due to the fire shield. The fire shield will essentially go off every time that Providence hits you, period. And now we're about to take this guy out. Honestly, there's nothing he can do anymore. We've got the shield on, everything's good. Good night, sweet Providence. I always do make a bit of a ritual of picking up my remaining drones after I kill Providence, because he gives you money for some reason. Might as well. Anyhow, off we go. We have rescued the creature. Somebody did note in the thread that teleport sound at the end there. Nothing quite so ominous as thinking that the pretty much hellish man you just fought has escaped after all that. As a quick note, you can just sort of hit a button and be able to accelerate those credits. But there we are. We didn't unlock anything, but... oh, maybe we did. In truth, I unlocked the miner in a different video that I will be showing off later on. But, next time around, we've got all but 2 characters, and any 3 difficulties to play on. If anyone wants to see what the miner is like, feel free to vote that way. If you want to see the sniper, go ahead and vote that way. But, with that said, I think we're done for the day. I'll see you all next time.